Hello everyone, TWA here. Today we are building one of Tamiya's many reboxings of its very famous 1/48 scale A6M2, the Rufe. If you are curious about other things which can be done with this kit, I have a video on the standard A6M2 also on my channel.
Teki Wa Ikuman
One of the only exterior things I wanted to try and fix were the cowls, which are extremely thick. The cowl doesn't exactly seal against the fuselage, so thinning out this area wouldn't make it much weaker. I did this by just cutting with an X-Acto knife, and then, I don't think I recorded it, but I polished with sanding paper as well. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure that it was worth the effort to do this. The upper wings are straight from the A6M2 kit, and the gear indicators must therefore be removed. This is easily done with a pair of side cutters and an X-Acto knife. Compared to my A6M2, this seat came out much better. I laid a piece of Tamiya tape atop another and then cut eyeball scale strips. I then patterned off this image and superglued the ends of the belts into place before painting. Interior painting followed my typical process. Black base, then an initial layer of Tamiya XF71, followed by a highlight layer of the same mixed with a little bit of buff. Details were then picked out with their respective Vallejo colors. I think that these are actually supposed to be a faint green, but I just painted them in the standard that I do all seat belts, basically just using flesh tones until I like the way that the result looks. After a gloss coat of Future, Flory Model's black wash was applied in the cockpit, then removed with wet cotton buds and paper towel. I think I didn't leave the Future to dry long enough because it was abnormally difficult to clear off the wash. Interior chipping was accomplished with a silver Prismacolor pencil. The central float on this kit wound up being an absolute nightmare. I actually botched my initial attempt at adding weight, which is what you see in this clip, and wound up buying a second kit just to pilfer the float, add more weight, and try again. This was still only barely enough to keep the nose down, and even then it has to sit a little too far forward on the dolly. I don't know exactly how much weight is in this, but whatever you have is probably not enough. add more. No research was done on properly replicating the engine. I just did a standard, quick and easy technique for generic radials. Base in a semi-gloss black, then dry brush with the silver. If you want to be just a bit fancier, dry brush with a bright gunmetal and then do an even lighter dry brushing with pure silver. Once again, I am not satisfied with how Tamiya's IJN Gray comes out. I don't know what it is about this color, but no matter how many times I've used it on a model or fiddle with it off camera, I always think it's far too blue and far too dark. And this is even after mixing with a bit of white and a bit of buff. Because the upper surface of this build is going to be so opaque, most of the pre-shading was done with white, and then layers of white were built on top. I am very interested lately in the Aleutian's front. It is a fascinating theater, marred by the leadership of both sides basically forgetting that it was even happening, and there are plenty of fascinating machines with fascinating stories that I'd like to replicate from the area. Whether or not this specific plane actually existed is unknown and at this point likely unknowable. Multiple American pilots reported lilac Zeros, but there is no official record of such aircraft that we know of from the Japanese, and no official paint that would have been used. If this is real, there are two reasons I can think of for pilots and ground crew to decide to do this. Either they wanted to better camouflage against the water, in which case the lilac would probably skew towards a deep purple, or they are trying to camouflage against the Alaskan sky, in which case it would skew pink. I decided to try and replicate the pink option, based largely on this image I found on Wing's palette. I mixed it only using paints that they would have had access to, and I didn't keep track of the ratio. I just kept mixing red, white, IJN gray, and black until I found a color that dried to look roughly like the reference art. The color I wound up settling on looks a lot like the British Recon Pink, which I think makes this color scheme fairly plausible. The aircraft was glossed, and then decals were applied in the standard method. Microset, apply the decal after letting it soak for 40 seconds in warm water, then slather with Solvaset. After a few hours, the decals were sealed with Tamiya Clear, and the model was coated with Flory Models Wash. I believe it was grime, but I don't 100% recall. An hour and a half or so later, this was then removed with a wet paper towel. I picked up the panel lines on the cowl with Tamiya's gray enamel wash. For some reason I decided to try and do the exhaust and gun stains with Tamiya makeup. I don't like how it came out, and I think this settled that I really need to continue using the airbrush for these features in the future. You can just barely see it, but the weight in the float was still not enough. I added a few more sinkers into the interior of the cowling and hoped that that would bring the nose down. Exterior chipping was picked out with Vallejo silver and a fine brush. The canopy was attached with crystal clear. A small gap was filled with the same, and then I later painted it over with an eyeballed color match. The antenna wire was attached with superglue and made from Easy Line. The pitot was replicated with an AK chrome pen. Beside the weight issue, this was a plenty enjoyable kit at an entirely reasonable price. If you want a Rufe in 1:48 scale and you are on a budget, there's little other option and you can't really go wrong with this set.